Hey, everybody, before we jump into the show, I just wanted to let you all know that myself and Mike and Steph made some appearances on some local and national live recordings of podcasts, and those are now available. So, all three of us were a part of an event last Monday during All Star Week called Monday Night Live, put on by Verde All Day, We Are Austin TV, and Otra Por Favor. You can hear that part now on Verde All Day's Emergency podcast. That's up already. And then I made a brief cameo in the Soccer Wise live podcast during All Star Week. That is also up on their feed from a few days back. So just wanted to plug those. We forgot to do it in the meat of the show, so I just wanted to do it here. Thanks. Bye. The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello, friends. Thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week, we're going to cover Austin's big win away at DC United. We'll catch up with Jeremiah on his thoughts on the All-Star game from afar, as well as Don Garber's State of the League address. And we'll cover some other Austin FC news, including a new center back that became official and a few other player rumors that are maybe officially becoming unofficial. My name's Landon Cottom, and I'm joined once again by a man who I assume in Florida was riding alligators with Pitbull. It's Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jeremiah Bentley. And yes, this is absolutely what one does in Florida. I had my greatest Florida man experience possible. I got very tan. I just started to itch from getting very tan, like right now when this show started recording. As one knows who spends too much time in the sun. So we'll see how this goes from here.
Glad to have you back. Before we get into the soccer here, I wanted to plug a little event that I'm going to be involved in. This is a live podcast taping. It's going to be myself on this panel, Chris Moser from Progress, Texas, and then also Austin FC's Brad Stuver. And so the three of us are going to mostly be talking about Brad's work off the field, kind of his activism and the Brad and Ashley Stuver Foundation. So if that's something you think you might be interested in, that's going to be Monday, September 15th, starting at 6 p.m. And that's going to be at Hop Squad, just across from the stadium there. So we'll put a link in the show notes and we'll talk more about it as we get closer. But check it out if that's something you think you might be interested in.
Oh, before we get onto the soccer, there's one more thing I thought of. Because I think both of us are casual gamers and we never talk about it very much.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a total toxic gamer, bro, Jeremiah.
Okay.
I played so much Mario Kart this weekend.
Well, I've been playing this little golf game on my phone, and I appreciate a good username, which made me think of like some of your favorite band names. And so last week I was in Florida. So one night I was just sitting around and I played against a user named Ario Teabaggin, which I think is pretty genius. And then the next one was against Gringo Star. So I just like both of those made me think.
Oh, Gringo Star would be a
like
great,
Landon.
like, stupid cover band name.
Yeah. So do you have any other gaming admissions you want to make, or should we just get off this and maybe talk about an amazing week in Austin soccer?
My mom found a Switch 2 at her local Costco. She just happened to be there as they were putting new stock out, and so she picked one up for me. And so I've had the Switch 2 for a few weeks, which is fun. But there's only like 3 games on it so far. So I've been playing a lot of Mario Kart and then mostly playing all the games I had on my Switch 1.
Yeah, that seems to happen a lot with the new consoles, where you just play the old things in a new place.
And it just loads faster.
Exactly.
All right, let's get into the soccer. Austin FC erupts for 4 goals away at DC United. This is only the 5th time in club history and the first time on the road that they've scored 4. The club is now up to 7th place in the Western Conference, and I believe Austin FC is now has more goals than the current MLS Golden Boot leader, which was not true a few days ago.
Yeah, that was a really sad number to read. So I'm very happy to have that. I heard the guys on the broadcast doing math about what percent of Austin's goals for the season they were scoring on this night. I feel like it ended up being 19%.
Yeah, I saw the North End post it.
Including, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 19% of their season total was on that night. Yeah. So I wanted to catch back up on your hat. Is 4 goals enough, Jeremiah?
Wait, Landon.
There you go.
No, it is not. I
Let's make
still
it
wish we
5,
could have scored
boys.
more goals. Yeah, it's time to get 5.
Yeah. So this was a really nice game to watch for the most part. A few frustrating moments. Not everything went perfect, but tell me if I'm being hyperbolic or having a short memory. This might be the most fun I've had watching Austin FC since 2022.
I may be in the exact same place. And one of the things I was going to talk about for being off last week was the LA Galaxy game was really fun for us. And I just felt like that just showed what a low bar we had for joy at that point by the time we played LA. So then to have that like a little bit of an adrenaline burst from watching the LA match and then to also see this, I mean, it was beautiful. And it was beautiful just, I think, because of the way they played. Like, this is all the things that you want from this possession-based football system. And, you know, DCU is super leaky, and that probably had something to do with it. But everybody was just, like, firing on all cylinders. So this wasn't 5 goals because, like, flukes or whatever. And maybe we could get into maybe one of the goals kind of was at the end. But anyhow, like, this is just, like, the team that was playing, like, beautiful, creative football. And if they would have scored 3 goals, probably it still would have been a fun match to watch.
Yeah, for sure. You already hinted at this. It is absolutely worth saying that DC United is a bad soccer team. They are awful. They had some moments of offensive spark because they do have some really talented players, not just Benteke, but Peglo and Pirani showed flashes where it's like these guys are special and probably on a better team, they would be garnering a lot more attention just because they're not having to do it all themselves. But those moments were fleeting in this game, and their defending was terrible most of the night. That being said, being an Austin FC fan, it feels good to make a bad team look bad because they don't always do that.
Yeah, I feel like that's a team that's, I don't know if Austin's ever been talented enough to really make this true, but like it feels like Austin often plays down against bad teams and plays better against good teams. Like they don't seem to put competition away. I felt like they played faster too. And that was from me watching it. I was super interested in your perspective about one, they seem more direct. Maybe it's because like DCU was sort of giving up the middle spaces, expecting Austin to push wide, but they seem quicker too. Just even when they would pass the ball all the way back to Stuver, which is going to be like one of the most amazing sequences is on one of these goals. Like it just felt like they played with urgency on that night that they haven't before.
Yeah, it seemed like DC was very much trying to keep Austin from playing into those pockets where it was Rubio or Dani or Owen, depending on the moment, in those little half space pockets. And so they're very keen on trying to keep Austin from playing in those areas. But what Austin was doing was they would play wide and they had these patterns in place or just some ideas. They weren't fixed patterns. It wasn't the exact same thing every time, but it was essentially, and this was mostly true on the left side, some on the right, but mostly on the left. The ball goes wide. If there's a player in that half space pocket, they either receive the ball or if that's not on, they'll make a vertical run. Either that passes on, and if it's not, then they're carrying a defender out of that space. And then one of the more central players pops in, or if the fullback isn't involved in that first move, then the fullback would underlap into that space, and then they'd look for that pass. And if that wasn't on, then they would shift back around and maybe play back to a center back or something. But those little triangles inverting on themselves and overlapping on themselves, they were very sharp, very clear ideas on, okay, this is what I see, this is what I do next. And it feels like even in the games where those combinations have worked, that a lot of times they're thinking about it a little bit too hard. And it felt very natural and very instinctive by the players in this game, which is great to see because that has just never been the case in any of these teams. I think even in that 2022 team, like they had some stuff that worked, but then there were moments in that season where stuff did not work and it didn't look this instinctive. And again, DC sucks. They are bad, but it's still really nice to see them having these clear of an ideas, and hopefully it can be a confidence booster and they can carry that into playing against a slightly better team and still pulling it off.
Yeah, and that 2022 team had also Sebastian Djordjevic at his peak, who made some of those things just happen on his own,
Right.
regardless of whatever else. So do you feel like, the DC thing aside, are we attributing to this like familiarity? Do we feel like, is Nico, he's like tinkered and he's like done tinkering? Like, what do you think the main contributor to something like this is? Because we have seen consistency in lineups. So I feel like the guys getting to know each other, is probably some of it. But like, are there other parts to it that you attribute it to?
I think there's a lot to be said for familiarity and chemistry, and we'll talk about that maybe a little bit later during some of the goals. But I think also the personnel that was on the field, that on paper, when they're showing it as a 4-4-2, which it was not, we'll get into that later too. It might look weird to have Owen Wolf on the wing and to have two strikers when that formation hasn't worked for us. But in practice, what they were doing was getting guys like Owen Wolf and Danny Pereira and Diego Rubio into those half space pockets, and then putting Guilherme Biru, sorry, let me put some respect on his name, MLS All-Star Guilherme Biru, into spaces where he can just be like, use his instincts and go where, like, follow his nose essentially, and make moves, make runs where there's space open. And he's good at that stuff. And then on the other side, I think the chemistry maybe plays a bit more here, with Bukari and Dessler getting to know each other a little bit better and working off of each other on that side. So I think I think it's a little bit of both. I did hear some folks suggesting, like, is this team better without Brandon Vasquez? And the answer might be yes, but I want to cut out any indication that Brandon Vasquez was the problem, because he absolutely was not, aside from missing a bunch of chances in front of goal. But as far as fluidity of play, Brandon Vasquez helped that for the most part. I think what does help is not trying to play Uzuni and Vasquez on the same 11, which is still a problem we'll have to figure out when Vasquez comes back. But for now, it lets Uzuni play in a natural position that he feels good doing. And then we have some other guys playing in positions that come naturally to them, and they're just flowing off of each other, and it looks really nice.
Yeah, I almost wrote that into the opening. I'm like, man, it's one, we're just a very few games into it, and we try not to overreact to very small sample sizes. But it does seem like that unlocks something, and we'll see how this carries out down the road. So we've mentioned him. I feel like people know this is an Owen Wolf appreciation show in many ways. But man, on this night, it's hard to believe that guy is 20 years old with everything he does. From like the headed goal, which I feel like is not something you expect to see out of Owen Wolf.
Yeah.
To like this sequence on the goal right after, where he kind of like, he's running and he slides to keep a ball in bounds and like pops back up. And
yeah, I can't wait to talk about that goal.
Doesn't even break stride. Like,
good Lord.
Yeah, just that dude. He's amazing. We should all appreciate him.
Yeah. So I think him and Uzuni, him and somebody made it onto the MLS team.
Bukari.
Owen and Bukari.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well deserved. I mean, they're both menaces in this game. Let's talk about the road ahead going forward. So we said Austin FC is in 7th. They also have a game, 1 to 2 games in hand on most of the teams around them, meaning that there's a chance to extend that lead or catch up to some folks ahead of them. And we have a quote unquote easier schedule. We talked about this a while back, but I think it's remained true that we still only have 2 games against teams who are above us in the table, that being Seattle and LAFC for that makeup game. And so the points are there for the taking. And if this team can play even to 60 to 75% of how they did the other night, they should and probably will take a lot of those points.
Yeah, I mean, it's really exciting. Like, I feel like we've got another run of games at home after not having them for a while. And I think over the next month, especially, like it's right up until the Minnesota Open Cup match. Like it's a schedule that there are points to be had, and it's good to see this team, figuring each other out. And we could talk about the off week and maybe where that matters, but it's an exciting time to be an Austin fan for maybe what the promise of the future holds. And I will continue to say that by being in 7th, Austin's actually in a playoff spot, since like they don't have to worry about the 8-9 whatever that nonsense is. And it's probably better for this team to not have to worry about any extra games.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Later on, we are going to talk about the new center back, Matej Djordjevic. We're going to talk about some other player links that seem to maybe be fizzling out. And then we're going to give an update on the whole Dani Pereira situation. Jeremiah and I haven't really gotten a chance to talk about this. It was Mike and I last week. And then there's been quite a bit happened between now and then. So we'll catch up on that. But hang tight. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Moon Tower Soccer.
No one is around.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FVF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education. And they have their own podcast called Summary Judgment, which you can check it out wherever you get your podcasts.
You can go to FVF.law to find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FVF.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. As a credit union, Amplify has no shareholders or parent companies. That means more of your money stays in the community.
Amplify has been the home of fee-free ranking since 2022. So if you have been with them since then, years worth of fees you would have saved at this point in time. Think about it. You could probably buy at least 3 or 4 jellyfish at Q2 Stadium for that kind of money.
Maybe even have paid for your season tickets or something at this point.
Yeah. So do that. Their free checking accounts come with 0 overdraft fees for minimum balances. That means Amplify's fee-free checking accounts help you get more mileage from your everyday spending.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your banking and Amplify Credit Union. To learn more and to register for free parking at the Amplify Esperanza branch on game day, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower-soccer. And Moon Tower Soccer is once again brought to you by Tony C's Pizza and Beer Garden, serving New York-style pizza and authentic Italian. They are now open in Kyle at Kohler's Crossing, in Round Rock in front of Del Diamond, and on Anderson Lane near Shoal Creek Boulevard. The Anderson Lane Beer Garden is just 2 miles from Q2 Stadium. You can stop by for a pizza and a pint before all this year's home games, and with TVs on every wall, it's the perfect spot to watch away games.
You can bring the whole family for lunch or dinner. You can catch the Austin game, other games, other sports at the same time. Be sure to check them out. Let's talk about the pizza of the month. Broccolini, olive oil, roasted broccolini, fresh mozzarella, cherry tomatoes, roasted garlic. I think we talked about last time that we did this, the vegetables they have at Tony C's Pizza and Beer Garden are amazing. It's one of the best things about eating there.
It's an artful veggie pizza and not just dumping a bunch of stuff onto a thing that becomes a wet mess.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. Also, 2 for Tuesday, 2 pizzas for the price of 1 every Tuesday. Picture Perfect Thursdays, high price of beer every Thursday.
Tony C's Pizza and Beer Garden is Austin owned and operated. Be sure to check them out online at TonyC'sBeerGarden.com. All right, we are back. Later on the show, I promise we'll get to the player rumor, signing, whatever else updates. But first, we're going to cover this exciting DC United away game. Jeremiah, what were some of the narratives leading into this one?
Well, one was Austin had a successful performance against the Galaxy. They get a little time out. Would Austin build on it? Because we saw in the past, Austin building a little bit of momentum and not being able to capitalize on it when they had some time out. It seems like this will turn out to be, they were able to do that and more. Clean bill of health for the club. So we see that Brendan Vasquez is going to show up at the injury report every week, obviously now. And I think we even got post-surgery. Oh, this is one of my favorite things. So we get the Brendan Vasquez walking out of the crutch, having successful surgery, which again continues the 100% trend of somebody saying their ACL surgery was successful. Have you ever seen the post-injury thing where it's yep, the doctor really screwed that up. So I wouldn't read too much into that, but regardless, successful.
Yeah, I think it's more of a, it didn't go terrible. We wouldn't be talking about it if it went terrible.
Yeah. And you wrote the Spot Talk in Doubt note, which I kind of forgotten about. What was that?
I was taken out of the game with concussion protocol before.
Oh, that's right.
And that, like, we've seen that, like, sometimes it's a few days. Sometimes if you're Matt Beasler, you retire after that.
It ends your career. Yeah, it's true.
And so, yeah, it's, I think the protocol is X number of days after you stop showing symptoms. And we didn't, because of All-Star, we didn't get a midweek press conference. And so we didn't get any update at all until the lineups came out, essentially. So it was good to see him on there. Glad. Hopefully that means he didn't experience any symptoms and he actually was ready to go. But again, just as has been the case for a lot of the season, we would have been in trouble if he weren't there because A, Julio Cascante starting, B, there's nobody else on the bench.
Right. And then we wondered if we would see Nicky Boloco anywhere. We saw like him in street clothes, right?
Was he at the game? I missed that, if that's true.
I thought I saw him like in street clothes at the game, but yeah, not playing or on the roster for sure.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. I think they've done that with new players before, where they would take them to an away game, probably just to get to know folks and see how things are going and everything, but not super shocking. I was kind of hoping we might see him on the bench, but also we have a fair number of guys who are here and have been training and are match fit who can play in those positions right now. And so it's not really a position of urgency at the moment. So it's also not super surprising to not see him. And I don't think it's anything we should be like concerned about at this point. I'm sure they'll work him in slowly and comfortably just because there's not urgency to get him on the field immediately.
Yeah, and that's one of those positions that we can talk about when we talk about later in the year. We should probably talk about it in future shows where it becomes interesting on who makes the game day 20.
Yeah.
When you look at the number of relatively talented players available at that spot.
All right, let's get into this lineup. So it was the exact same lineup as the Galaxy game, I think, with Stuver in goal, MLS All-Star Guilherme Biru, left back, Heinz Eichen Svatak, center back, Dessler, right back. And then we had, again, the broadcast showed this as a 4-4-2, which we defended in a 4-4-2. We almost always do. The attacking shape in this game looked mostly more like the 4-3-3, like the 4-1-2-3 look, with Ilya as the lone six, Dani dropping in next to him sometimes, but a lot of times playing ahead of him, kind of symmetrically positioned with Diego Rubio. So those two guys is like the dual eights. And then Owen Wolf on the left wing, Uzuni at striker, Bukari at right wing. And I was a little bit surprised in this game. Owen, a lot of the game, did straight up play winger. He was quite wide for a lot of the game. And if you look at his touch map, a lot of his touches are wide. There was quite a bit of rotation. And as Biru would push higher, Owen would tuck in sometimes, or there would be some rotations where if Dani was deeper, then Owen would drop in as well. And so they would kind of move off of each other. But if everyone was in kind of the standard shapes, Owen was very wide and playing in that, what you would think of as a winger position.
Yeah, it was the same lineup. I think it was a little bit different from the time before, but it's because the official league page showed it like a different formation. But yeah, same group of guys.
And it was a different formation, just not the one they showed on TV.
Yeah, not the one on TV. Man, I mean, let's just get into it. Like, Austin looks good, I think, from the start. Feels like Austin's on the front foot, so I'm not surprised at all when Austin picks the first goal.
Yeah, this is in the 22nd minute. It is an extremely simple play where Brendan Heinz-Eich just plays a pass right up the gut to Uzuni. He lets it run past him in the box. Super well-weighted ball into the box, so Uzuni lets it kind of run across his body and past the defender, takes one touch with his right foot to set up the shot with his left foot and places it past Barraza, the keeper. Like, why was this goal so easy? It's a thing. And I don't want to take anything away from the skill. The pass was really good, like really well weighted, really well placed. The touch and the finish were really nice from Uzuni. But watching kind of the build up into this one, Austin had been looking for Wolf and Rubio and Pereira in those half space pockets, like I mentioned earlier. And they had some success in this game. And then against the Galaxy, they had success playing into those areas. And so their midfielders are super worried about closing down those areas, which opens up a huge gap up the middle of the field. And then also, Austin's playing around the back. It goes wide to Dessler. He doesn't have a passing option. So he, oftentimes, if he doesn't have an option, he'll cut inside and like carry the ball inside to open up a passing option for himself. And so he does that, swings it around to Brendan Hines-Ike. And then Benteke and Pirani, who are there like pressing forwards in their defensive shape, they just stop. They're just walking after that. And so Brendan Hines-Ike carries the ball past midfield. Nobody ever, like past the midway line, nobody ever puts pressure on him. And so he's just standing there. And Uzuni does that same little movement that opened up the space against the Galaxy, where if he thinks a pass is about to come, he'll separate from the center back a little bit. And that allows him to either receive to feet, or if there's space in behind, he can receive on the run and either cross up that center back or get past the center back, which he did in this one. And Brendan Hines-Ike sees it and just says, okay, if y'all are going to let me do this. And he hits that really nice pass, and that's the goal.
Yeah, and this is one of those, like, maybe correlation is not causation things, because I feel like this is a chance that Uzuni has gotten. Maybe not the exact same sequence, but like this type of chance Uzuni has gotten in the past. And when Brendan Vasquez was on the field, it seems like the one that he would like kick straight at the keeper or bounce on the post or whatever. And so I don't know if this is confidence, or I think we can get into this with a post-game interview thing with Nico, but like the fact that he's finishing the way that we all thought he would finish when Austin brought him in from Spain is very rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you catch on the broadcast him yelling? So once again, he did not celebrate the goal last week. He barely celebrates this week. And the camera shows a close-up of him. I'm assuming they're expecting him to be celebrating, and instead he's yelling at Dani Pereira for some reason.
Yeah, I did see that. And like I saw it in the moment, and I saw it on the rewatch on Sunday morning, and then I rewound it to see. And I'm like, did the broadcast just skip some celebration? It goes straight to him being angry, but I don't know that it did. If there was a celebration, it was very brief because there was not enough time for him to do that. So what is he yelling at Dani about that? Do you know?
My theory is earlier in the game. So think about the pass Diego Rubio plays to Uzuni on the goal he scored against the Galaxy, where the pass is played in pretty firmly right on the heels of the defender there. There's an opportunity for Dani to play essentially that exact same ball to Uzuni earlier in this game, and he plays it too softly, and the center back cuts it out. And then Hines-Ike hits that ball with really good weight on it. And my theory is he's saying, Dani, that's how you hit that pass. Hit it strong. And I was trying to read his lips, and I'm not sure if he was speaking English or Spanish. And I couldn't read it in either language, but my theory is that's what he said. But the next cut is him walking up to Dani and them giving each other a big hug. So I don't think there's any hard feelings. He's just, we've seen how he speaks during or after games. He's very direct and very straightforward. He says, you passed it bad. Do it better next time.
I did feel like that was a very much a man who sees everything moment. So that's what I thought as soon as I saw it. So, and then I think Austin like concedes a little pressure. I think after that, like leading into the later part of the first half, DCU starts to look somewhat better, but I mean, not like super threatening.
They have moments where they are breaking our press, but then often not really able to do anything with it once they get into the attacking third. And that's credit to Austin's team defending. And I think for the most part did quite well. There's some breakdowns, which we'll get to later, but they keep them pretty quiet in the first half.
And they noted this on the broadcast, but up until the moment of the PK being allowed, like Austin does a great job in Christian Benteke on kind of just being in Alexander Spatak specifically, like just kind of being up in him and not letting him get any free space.
Yeah, it wasn't always pretty, but he was working his butt off to make sure that he didn't get too much space. So we get one more right before the half. This is the Owen Wolf one you alluded to earlier. an authoritative header from the 5'8" Owen Wolf or whatever. Mind you, he was being defended by 5'6" or 5'7" Randall Leal, but that's neither here nor there. So this one starts off with a Biru shot, a really heavy Biru shot that gets parried out for a throw in. The broadcast cuts away, and I had a big, I didn't hit the button, but I essentially did an all caps on MLS broadcast last week. I thought this one was actually pretty good, but we did miss this throw in. And so the broadcast cuts back, and somehow Bukari is wide right 1v1 with the defender. And then Dessler is pushing into the 18. And so Bukari plays a little 1-2 with Dessler that puts him onto the inline. He does some of that famous Bukari dancing on the ball that just leaves defenders either on skates and falling down or just not sure what to do. And eventually he just lays it back to Dessler, who, because Bukari had drawn in so many defenders, Dessler has a bunch of time just to kind of put his head down, loft a ball to the back post. It's a nice ball, but Owen is there, marked by Randall Leal. Leal backs into him and has pretty good contact on him, and Owen just goes up, is able to get some air, and gets a really powerful contact on the ball. Again, like it's tough to get that strong contact from kind of a standing start there, and then also places it where like Barasa was back across the goal and had an okay chance to save it if it wasn't placed well, but he just hammers it in right under the crossbar. And it's a great goal, but also just like so good again to see Owen get rewarded for all he's done this season.
Yeah, and it was one of those, I don't know if you saw the photos kind of the moment, but as a fan of the early 2000s NBA, it was like a Michael Jordan dunking on a guy moment.
Yeah,
right. Like Owen's kind of
posterized for sure.
Him. Yeah, absolutely. To put that on a poster, place that all over social, like that was Owen just owning a dude. And one, I don't know, like slightly strange stat I looked up is this is his first multiple goal season since 2023, I think, which is the only two seasons he scored more than one goal in a season. Which I know Owen's like not a goal scorer, but I just thought it was like an interesting little aside that he's there now, and I would expect to see more from him given the way he's been playing lately.
I want to talk a little bit about Bukari here. He was the player that they brought out for the post-game press conference, and he talked about working with Dessler since Dessler's come back from the injury, and thinks that since then they've been able to develop a lot of chemistry because they weren't always on the same page at the beginning of the season. Then Dessler goes out, and he's having to learn to play with new players, and then Dessler comes back, and they finally look like they're starting to understand each other a little bit more. Not just on the attacking side, but defensively. Bukari did some really good stuff defensively, and I think Josh Wolf last season talked about how Bukari was struggling a little bit to kind of know what to do when defensively, and you saw him progress over those last few games. Over this season, I think that's continued. I love seeing high-profile attackers show a dedication to getting better at defending, not just doing it because coach said I had to, but actually learning and growing and figuring out the patterns, knowing, okay, if this ball goes here, don't run straight at it. Take this angle so you can keep this player in your cover shadow. Bukari is doing stuff like that, and I think that's great.
Well, so Austin goes in the half. I think that was like an interesting place to put that in, and he did do that there. But like Austin goes in the half up 2-0. Austin comes out, gives up a goal early in the second half, and I feel like Bukari is part of the reason for that in a moment where he doesn't do that kind of defending that he did mostly almost the whole night.
Yeah, and I'll defend Bukari a little bit here. He, in this exact moment, he should have, is it Peglo that makes that run? Yeah.
Yes, Peglo makes the run. Yeah.
Joao Peglo. So Austin's team defending was mostly pretty good. They were not always pressing super high, but kind of picking moments, like usually on like back passes to the keeper. Everyone will press up and they'll try to trap the opposition in those moments. In this situation, so DC changes up how they're playing in the second half. They're down 2-0. Of course, they're going to get a little bit more aggressive. They push their fullbacks much higher. And then Peglo, who's the left winger, and the broadcast got their formation wrong too. They were mostly playing in kind of like a 4-2-3-1 when the broadcast showed like a 5-3-2 or something. But Peglo was the left wing, Leal was the right wing. They were squeezing inside and then often dropping in to get involved in more combination play. And this is where this goal stems from. So Bukari, like Peglo drops into that deep space. Bukari follows him inside. And I think this is where the problem starts. Peglo plays inside to Enau and then makes a run towards the box. And Bukari doesn't follow him then. Dani thinks that pass is going to Leal, so he jumps that pass, which takes one more defender out. And then Enau just like steps past Ilie, I think. And then Dessler then becomes like the next man up when they play a ball to Pirani. So he has to slide inside. Svatak is there. He could have stepped out, but he's marking Benteke, and it's a good idea to not leave Benteke unmarked in the box. So everyone gets pulled over because of that one shift that we didn't adapt to. And so, yeah, Bukari should have followed that run. But I think in the way we were playing in the first half, he probably didn't have to then. Whereas with the changes that DC made, he needed to now. And so they should have done better, but they did. Like what I like seeing about this is they did make that shift after this and made some changes as the game went on to make sure that exact thing didn't happen again. But they did get caught unaware here, and DC punished them for it.
Yeah, it's also the kind of thing, kind of to the point, like it's okay to get caught in that space and give up that goal, depending upon how you respond. And unlike from some other times earlier in the season when Nico has talked about the team responding in the second half to goals, like the team does respond with like results to this. And so it's not that much longer before maybe one of the prettiest goals I've ever seen from the team, like since the beginning, comes to pass.
Yeah, this is, there's that Twitter account. I guess it's still there. Maybe it exists somewhere else, but when playing it out of the back goes wrong, this is when playing it out of the back goes right. And Austin shows patience in their buildup and rewards themselves for it. And Brad Stuver, earlier in this game, he has a defender running at him and he like cuts the ball back behind his plant leg with a guy right in his face. And that scared me. I think on this goal, what he did was, it was brave, but not stupid in the way that I think the other move maybe was, where he's got their two forwards in his box, staring him down, but they're not biting on him. They're waiting for him to make a pass so that they can jump it. And Brad waits and waits and waits, finds Dani, and is able to split two lines of defense to find Dani there. Dani's able to turn, drives forward, plays a ball wide to Owen, and the ball's a little bit off target and coming in with quite a bit of pace. Owen, being the supreme athlete that he is able to, like, in one fluid motion, slide on the ground, stop the ball, control it, pop up, and then continue carrying it forward. That was super impressive. And then he maybe does something even more impressive right after this, where he draws in two defenders and then does this little like elastico move. If you don't know what an elastico is, Google it and you'll be like, oh yeah, that. But it's like he kind of like shifts the ball and then plays the pass in with one foot in one super fluid motion. And he's able to get around one of their defenders to do that, and then also plays the pass right into Dani's path. Biru makes the run across Owen's face there and carries one defender. Uzuni makes another run, carries another defender. And so when Dani winds up to shoot, he forces a defender to step to him, freezes the goalkeeper, and then instead of shooting, just very calmly passes it over to Bukari on the right, where there are no more defenders because of what all of their teammates had done the 5 passes before. And so he's 1v1 with the keeper. And again, talking about Bukari's growth, how many times this year have we seen him get into not maybe this good of a position, but in pretty good positions, and he just hits the ball as hard as he possibly can and just hopes something good comes from it. And this time, instead, he stays calm, 5 holes the keeper, and scores without hitting it super hard at all. That's really, really well done all the way across the board. And I think it was 4 or 5 passes from Stuver, maybe 5, but they all counted. They all took defenders out of the play. And that's another thing we don't always see Austin do. The passing doesn't always have purpose, and every one of these passes absolutely had purpose.
Yeah, I think one thing is like you talked about this Bukari's growth. Like it was not, was it a simple finish? But like the angle he took was like it was a professional finish.
It was,
that was
I
really
would say,
good to see.
composed. It was composed.
Yes.
It was not just, okay, I'm here and I'm going to try to use power. He used a little bit of finesse and definitely had composure. And I think that is one area where we didn't always see it, and we did here.
Oh, and one thing I was gonna mention, we talked a lot about line breaking, and you talked about Stuver's passing breaking 2 lines. Just like really quickly for people who don't watch a lot of soccer, like what does that actually mean?
Yeah, so think of like our defensive shape is normally a 4-4-2. And so we'll have 2 forwards. In this game, it was mostly Uzuni and Rubio. And then you have your line of 4, which is your 2 central mids, and your wingers dropping back into that line of 4. And then you have your back line, another line of 4. When I say break a line, what I mean is you played a pass and took one of those lines of defenders out of the equation. And so instead of like playing that horseshoe of sadness passing, you're passing it, you're breaking no lines. All the defenders are still between you and the goal with each one of those passes. If you can play through one of those lines, that's a much more advantageous position. And so that's what I mean by breaking a line. It's essentially playing through one of those literal lines of defenders.
Yeah, I played a lot of foosball on Saturday night, and it's also like very, very easy to think about it in those terms. Like,
yeah,
that one little knob full of guys. Like you pass one of those and maybe pass 2 of those.
Yeah,
to get
exactly.
in a good position.
And Stu, because they drew so many defenders up on them, like a pass from the keeper, you're lucky if you break 1 line. He breaks 2, and then Dani's in a bunch of space there. So yeah, that's part of why the patience and the composure playing it out of the back really paid off in this one.
Yeah. So then almost right after this, we get sort of a very nervy moment live where DC just almost comes straight off the kickoff to score a goal to what looked like make it 3-2 and what was called to make it 3-2, complete with lights and celebration in the stands on the field.
Yeah, so Austin commits a foul right after DC kicks off. DC restarts the ball quickly and kind of catches Austin off guard here. Leao plays a ball into Benteke's feet, and he has Pirani as like the 3rd man running there, and Benteke sees him. And so as the ball comes in, he just flicks it over like past Austin's back line into Pirani's path. And then it's a really nice finish from Pirani here. He's 1v1 with Stuver from a pretty tough angle, but it's a really deft little finish that he does here. Luckily, Benteke, when he received the ball, was just barely offside. And he didn't need to be. Like, him being offside did not necessarily help this play in any way. So Austin catches a lucky break here. And again, it's just them getting caught off guard a little bit, which is kind of the same thing with the first goal that they scored, where, yeah, they just didn't adjust or didn't react quick enough to something that DC did new.
So luckily, this one's disallowed. I don't think there was any. I mean, you said it was barely offside, but like, I don't feel there was a ton of question about it. Like, he was offside. It's not one of these like,
yeah, he was off
by a toenail or whatever things.
Yeah, I mean to say that like it wasn't super influential in the play, but by the rule of the law, they have to call it back, and they did.
All right, let's talk about Jared Stroud, other than screw that guy, which I assume that's the reason you wrote that note in, but maybe you had something else to say about him.
Oh, we start seeing some subs for both teams at this point. Jared Stroud comes on the 66, and I went to the watch party at the Siete headquarters, which was a lot of fun. The space there, I'd never been in there. It's actually really well set up for a watch party like that. They had lots of great food and drinks, and we're doing little embroidery stations and stuff. So it was a really fun event. But I'm sitting there on this couch in the Siete headquarters, just like mumbling to myself, if Jared Stroud scores on us, I swan to John, I'm going to tear this projector screen off the ceiling. wouldn't have been able to handle it. Luckily, I think he got one shot and hit it well over the crossbar, which I did not take any joy in whatsoever. Savovich and Taylor come on for Rubio and Wolf a little bit after that. This is one of the adjustments, talking about Austin seeing where DC was hurting them and adjusting to it. Savovich subbed on for Rubio, and most of the time we've seen Savovich playing deeper in the midfield. So I was thinking, okay, maybe we'll shift some people around, but that's not what happened here. He offensively took up Rubio's exact role and was playing as one of the 10s, essentially, which he's done. He did that in Sweden, and he looked good in this game doing that. And then defensively, Rubio was pushed up high next to Uzuni, and he, like, after a bit, Savovich has dropped a little bit more into the midfield, and they're almost playing like a 4-5-1 defensively, trying to keep those midfield combinations they were doing from happening again. And then also it allows those wingers, when they needed to drop back into the back line and almost make it a 5-back on the strong side there when it needed to. And so that play from Peglo, when he moves inside, Bukari in this situation knows, no, that's not mine. We've got a bunch of midfielders. They can mark him. I'm going to stay wide and cover any wide players. And it really kind of quieted down DC for a while, until later when they start to put a little bit more pressure on.
Well, let's go into the fourth Austin goal. This is one I think I talked about earlier on, where maybe like one goal is kind of where things are going right. I feel like this Robert Taylor goal was one where this is a goal that goes in when things are going good for you, and this is like a chance that bounces off the post and doesn't get converted when things are going bad for you.
Yeah. So this one starts off with Hindsight cutting out a pass to Benteke. Duber-Sarski picks it up, plays up the field to Taylor, and then Duber gets on his horse, which I love this. Like, fresh legs. Maybe this isn't your position, but nobody else is going to run. You do it. Get up there. And so he gets on his horse to get upfield to support the play. Taylor kind of cuts inside and then lays a ball off for Duber-Sarski, overlapping who's cutting outside. He pushes past the defender into the 18-yard box and then cuts it back to the top of the box to Taylor. Taylor hits the ball across the face of goal to the far post. I think it catches the slightest touch from a DC defender's toe, and then it catches just enough of the inside of the crossbar to end up in the goal instead of outside of the goal. And so it's a good hit anyway, because I think it was maybe a few inches outside of the post, and that toe put it a few inches inside of the post. But I think like Taylor still deserves some credit for the run and the shot, because it wasn't that far off, but he did get a little bit of help. I really love the effort from Duber-Sarski. When you put a guy in like that, and it's essentially run, never stop running, that's your job in this game. To see him, who a defensive midfielder, making an overlapping run and then assisting the goal that kind of kills the game off, that's great. I love that.
And when you're not chasing a game, you know, there's like, he doesn't have to do that, right? I mean, he probably needs to do that because he wants to see more minutes on the field, but Austin's in pretty good shape here, up 3-1, and he comes in, I think, with like 10 minutes left in the match. Like, that's just personal motivation that leads to this kind of run and this kind of play.
And also coach's orders, I think. If you read between the lines on some things that Nico has said after games, and then in the like story of the match, like artsy highlight reel that they put out after some games from LA, at halftime, he's yelling at the guys like, don't get comfortable, don't sit back and try to hold this. Let's get another one. Let's go after him. And I imagine he was saying to them in this one too, like, don't get comfortable. Let's win. Let's not lose. Let's not tie. Let's go after it. And again, you're probably right. There's some personal motivation for Duber-Sarski here as well. But I imagine he heard Nico say, like, don't get complacent, don't get comfortable, don't be conservative. Let's go after him. And he did it here.
Yeah, and this, man, I thought it was a 4-1 finish because, like, this goal comes, and I had to take the dogs out to pee, and I just assumed it was all over. And I came back in with, like, Jackson reminding me, telling me that, like, there was one more goal in this match, and luckily it was not consequential at all.
Well, because we got 10 minutes added in this one. I don't really know why. I didn't see 10 minutes here, but and this one comes in 90 plus 7. So Actually, so right before that, Stuver spills a save in the 95th minute, and Gallagher is able to block Benteke's follow-up. Otherwise, it might have been even scarier than the Indian ended up being. But right after this, Svatak gives up a penalty by wrestling with Benteke in the box. This one was borderline, I think. I feel like in certain games, this one might not have been called a penalty, but Svatak almost certainly should have been called for a penalty earlier in the game when he had two big fistfuls of Benteke's shirt. So I think we'll chalk this one up to a persistent infringement penalty.
There you go.
Where it's like, okay, this one was borderline, but I let you go earlier and I can't do it again. And so Benteke scores the pin, makes it 4-2, but it's still a little bit too little too late. I saw Phil West post a goals added chart showing that Svatak was the lowest number on either team in this game. If you give up a pin, of course, that stat probably doesn't like you very much because you're giving up a 0.8 whatever XG chance on the other team. Again, Svatak didn't always look pretty, but that's a big task, like trying to match up with Benteke. He's a monster. And I thought overall he did fine. Like he did as much as we could ask him to, really.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. You know, on the night, and like this comes when it doesn't really matter. So good for him for doing the hard work when the game was sort of in doubt and competitive.
Let's move on to other notes we have. What else did we like? What else did we not like? Did we learn anything from this game?
Well, I'll start with this like dumb note on the broadcast because like I watch Apple TV. Well, I watch a lot of TV with the subtitles on, which I feel like I started with the Game of Thrones because I don't understand how TV programs like mix their music and words. And so it happened to be on for this game. And so Jamie Watson's on color, and you know, usually the closed captioning is just like what's going on. But then also, you know, the color guy, like while the play-by-play guy is like doing his thing, is also talking to the booth. And so you would see like play-by-play guy like call a thing, and then just like there's no words in the stands, but you hear like, okay, so throw it to the goal, throw it to the assist of the match, like at the next break, and then like somebody else say like copy that, and like the words weren't coming out, but they were showing up the closed captioning. So the closed captioning throughout the night, when they were just like letting the match happen on the field, was like what was like Jamie Watts was feeding back to the producer, which was like super entertaining.
Okay, so maybe that's part of why I thought this broadcast was actually pretty good, is that they seem to be proactive and on top of soccer things that were happening instead of other dumb stuff that was happening.
Because you could hear, so you couldn't hear the producer, but you could hear like him responding to the producer in his ear when the color guy wasn't talking. Like that was just coming through, which I probably not supposed to happen. And luckily for him, he didn't say anything that was like controversial at all off mic, but it was very weird because it's like there are no words coming out of the announcer's voice in the stadium, yet I am reading words on closed captioning. So that was the thing I enjoyed.
It's kind of like listening to a Rolling Stones record backwards and hearing the devil speak. If you watch Apple TV with the closed captions on, you can hear the producer.
Yes.
I liked that Austin FC completed like 3 or 4 backheel passes in this game. Again, the chemistry, the guys are just kind of feeling themselves a little bit and feeling confident, and I think that's a sign of it. Just to have the confidence or at times audacity to just blindly play a ball behind you and know that your teammate's going to be there to receive it. That's great.
I like we got a better locker room photo than the last time. It wasn't quite as much as the first away locker room photo, and I don't want us to like commit to analyzing every locker room photo, but like Svatak seemed to actually smile, which is always nice. And I feel like that was a good performance from the boys in the post game photo.
Bukari joined the shirts off flexing gang, which is new.
Oh yeah.
What else we got here? I'm gonna save my last thing I liked for the end, so we can end on a positive note here.
Okay.
I'm gonna move on to things I didn't like. After the first goal at the Siete watch party, Ray, the capo, you know Ray, he high-fived me so hard that I re-aggravated a shoulder injury that I've been nursing. And so I'm glad to have the goal, but I'll know to stay away from Ray while celebrating goals in the future. I didn't like that Owen Wolf went down in the 71st minute and immediately called for a sub, but it seemed after the game he was smiling, walking normally, so it seems like hopefully it's nothing. And then also I don't like that Hader Obrian was again unable to find Mirto Uzuni on the break late in the game. I think he tried this time, but just did a bad job as whatever game that was. He's like, I see you, but I'm going to get this one myself, and then missed.
And we might get into this later, but just Hunter Obrian in general right now, I would not put on my favorite Austin FC things list.
Yeah, for sure. Under the things we learned category, I think we maybe got some hints of this over the last couple of weeks, but Moises from Verdi All Day asked in the post-game press conference specifically about Robert Taylor's match fitness and if that's part of why he hasn't been starting. And that question has kind of been asked a few times to Nico over the last few weeks, and he's kind of dodged it or not answered it directly. And this time he did say that like conditioning, match fitness is not part of it. It is about deserving to start and showing up in practice. And again, he didn't straight up call him out, but the fact that that's been the answer several times makes me think that Robert Taylor maybe just hasn't been cutting the mustard in practice and needs to step up there. And when Nico says you have to earn your starting position, coming in and scoring a goal will certainly do that. But if he's not putting in the same work in training that these other guys are, then maybe that's why he's not getting the same opportunities that they are.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a thing you can do if you're like Leo Messi. Probably doesn't work very hard in practice, right? But like if you're a winger competing for a space against other wingers, like you're not good enough to not put in that kind of effort. So hopefully we'll see him do that because like clearly he's super talented and can add a lot to this team.
Yeah, and when it's John Gallagher at best putting in a shift on the wing, then okay, maybe you don't have to do that much in training to prove yourself. But when it's this team with Owen Wolf out there playing the way he's playing, and if that's the guy you have to beat out, that's a different scenario. And I like the way they're playing, I'm fine with him not starting. I want him to start over John Gallagher if that's the other option. But if it's this team playing this way, sit Robert Taylor all you want. I don't care.
Right, I feel like we covered this game, so let's
do
another ad. Wait,
one more thing I like.
Go.
This is from Nico Esteves post-game quotes on Uzuni. So he was asked, he had said something about having discussions with some of the players leading into this game. And he was asked, like, okay, what was the discussion with Uzuni and how did that lead to him finding this scoring form? And I took some of this translation from Verdi All Day because they had already done it, but then I added another part that I really liked. So this is Nico. He says, what I told him is that I believe in him until the day I die and that I love him. And then I'm by his side for anything that he needs. We didn't talk about tactics or anything. I simply gave him a little love that we all need from time to time. Things don't always go the way we want, and I believe he just needed someone to believe in him. Everyone in life needs someone to believe in us to fulfill our dreams, improve, and do things right. I believed that at that moment he needed support, above all someone who would stand by him because he deserves it for all the work he does and everything he accomplishes. I am still not convinced that Nico Esteves is a great soccer coach. I am, however, convinced that he's a good person and that there's a reason, like even after FC Dallas wasn't very good and he got fired, that all the players came out in support of him and wished him the best. It's because of stuff like this. And there's probably other things on the margins he could be improving, but I'll have at least some level of support for him always because of things like this.
Well, I will say, because I've talked about my annoyance with sometimes what I believe to be toxic positivity from him, it's authentic, right? Like he believes it. Maybe it's not the way I would approach things, but I have no doubt that he's sincere when he says things like this, and that's like what he really believes in his heart, that he's like a deeply caring person. So maybe it's on me that I need him to yell at more people every once in a while.
Yeah, I mean, Uzuni seems to have some confidence now, and hopefully this kind of stuff is helping. He's still not getting as much service as he should, but if we can get him a few chances a game, I don't see any reason why he can't continue this kind of form and keep putting in goals like he has been. All right, anything else, Jeremiah? I think we can go to the break now, huh?
Yeah, let's go to the break.
All right, we're going to come back, talk about all those player rumors we teased earlier, and yeah, hang tight.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. The Sage Wilson team is made up of Austin experts who are client-focused and have over 30 years of combined real estate experience. Our friends at Sage Wilson Realty are giving away 2 tickets to an upcoming match. You can fill out the form in the show notes for your chance to win.
If you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com.
And our premier sponsor is McGuire Woods Consulting, helping clients in the public affairs space from lobbying at the local, statewide, and federal levels to digital and communications campaigns across the country.
McGuire Woods Consulting has offices in 10 MLS cities, but only supports this podcast because we are rising up the table. We are ahead of FC Dallas and Houston, and we are going to win Copa Tejas in the next couple of weeks. I'm not sure if that's mathematically possible, but let's go with it.
Yeah, let's go with it. It's true. If you believe enough, it's true.
Contact our friends at McGuire Woods Consulting at mwcllc.com for more information. All right, we're back. We're going to get into a little bit more all-star talk here in a little bit. But first, we've teased these player rumors and new actual player signings enough. Let's finally get into that. We have a new boy, Jeremiah.
Yeah, we do. We have the official signing. I think y'all talked about it last week. I really am disappointed in the front office. Maybe they just gave up for not giving me a pronunciation guide for this one. So,
I can help. I know how to do this one. I watched enough international soccer and spent a few weeks in the Balkans that I'm fairly confident in this one. Mateja Djordjevic.
Mateja Djordjevic. Okay, via transfer from a club in Serbia. He's on a U22 deal. I think the things that we didn't know, guaranteed through 2028 with an option for 2029. Played in the Serbian first division for a little while. 51 appearances, 2 Champions League qualifying matches, 2 Europa League matches. I mean, somewhat accomplished. Definitely filling a gap on the roster because we knew that like we needed at least one more center back option. 6'3", so he's a good size. He's pretty young for like a defender that you signed. So be interesting to see like the profile of how he develops, and maybe what they spent on him, which I guess we won't necessarily know for a little while until we see like
the rumor for the fee was
roster.
$1 million-ish, maybe a little over $1 million. We don't know his salary. We do know because he's U22, it has to be below the max cap hit, which is 700 some odd thousand this season. But it could be anywhere between that, like 200,000 and that. So we don't know. We talked about it quite a bit. I gave a fairly in-depth scouting report on the last episode. I'm into this guy. Like, I think he's good. He's young. He's leaving his country for the first time. So there's all kinds of things that can and do often go wrong in these scenarios. But from what I saw in the film that I watched, I'm into it. I think he's going to be, I won't call my shot and say he's going to be a good player. I think he has the tools and the opportunity to be a good MLS center back.
Well, one of the interesting things with him, it's not always been the case when Austin is signing players from somewhere else, is like he's not the savior, right? Like Austin's not counting on him to do anything right away because, I mean, you know almost at this point when you're 2/3 of the way through the season, you're probably going to get a guy who can eat some minutes as a sub, but like you can't count on him to like come into this country and suddenly become a starter and a difference maker.
But we don't need him to be.
Yeah, we don't need him to be, which is the good thing. The good thing about that. And I guess, but then also that's kind of sort of my question, on the other side of it is like, what does this mean for the overall roster? because there are holes, and you sign a guy that feels a position of need, but not like the position of need if we were to rank them.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think this is one for the future. Like you said, we don't necessarily need him right now, but we do need more center backs. We only have 3. I'm guessing by the end of the season, like when contracts come due, all the ones that are here now are not going to still be here. And so we do need reinforcements. If this is when this one is available and when you have to pull the trigger and able to get him and not lose out on him to someone else, I'm fine with that. Go for it. If you believe in this kid, get him when you can get him.
And so this does like leave Austin in a bit of a bind with senior spot. Well, with senior spots and with international spots. Like, do you expect to see changes to come, or do we think this is the last move for this summer and we just kind of roll with what we have?
I don't think the transfer window is over for Austin yet.
Okay.
I think there's maybe some surprises in store for us still. We'll talk about Dani Pereira in a second and whether or not that one happens or not. I wouldn't be surprised to see either him or another player leave during this window, which would open up more of those spots and designations that we would need to maybe bring in some other players. And it's worth mentioning, so on the U22 thing, we didn't say this, but regardless of what his salary is, because he's a U22 player, he'll only hit the cap at 200 or 250K or something, and the transfer fee does not hit the cap at all, which it would for most players. So that's kind of the benefit of going big on these younger players that maybe not going to hit immediately, but the upside is there, which is also why the contract is so long. And that seems to be what Roto has done with some of these younger players we brought in, be it U22s or otherwise. The contracts have been 3 or 4 years guaranteed with an option. And I think that's smart because whether he comes here and is a huge success or not, you don't want to spend all this money and have them walk away for free at the end of it. And so lock them up long. If they are a success, sell them for big money. If they're not a success, you still have a long enough contract to sell them for small money, probably.
Yeah, and I was just thinking on roster construction that one of the other options that we maybe have that I think I've read something about, like is like maybe a Svatak green card, which also alleviates the international roster slot issue. It doesn't like fix everything, but it gives Austin more flexibility.
Svatak, maybe Biru. There's a few players that might be able to get one here fairly soon that would fix. If it's Obrian, there is the rumor about Obrian potentially leaving. If he goes, he's senior spot and an international roster spot. So that opens up both sides. With Brandon Vasquez out, we do still have one senior roster spot to fill.
That's right.
We do not have an international roster spot open right now. Djordjevic takes up the last one that we had. And we do have an extra one right now. We bought an extra one at the beginning of the season. So we have 9. That will reset back to 8 in the coming season. So that side of it is still a little tight, which means like if we do bring in another senior spot with the current setup, they will have to be domestic or have a green card.
All right, we've teased this a lot. Let's talk about Dani Pereira. Rumored transfer, and I feel like that got a lot of traction. Is a multi-million-dollar deal to Coventry City in the championship. And just kind of happened. It was like in between shows, but I feel like we saw it in a lot of places. Then we saw Tom Bogert deny it. And then I think, did you get the chance, or somebody had asked Bogert like live when he was in Austin last week about it? Like, what's the latest on that?
Yeah, so Bogert was telling folks at the event at Haymaker that like Moises from Verde All Day was part of this discussion, but he was saying just because, like Bogert said, my sources are saying the clubs have not talked to each other. Coventry and Austin have not had any contact. That does not necessarily mean that Coventry and Dani's camp haven't had any contact. That might be true, but there's been, so some of these reports and rumors have come from very concrete places. Others have come from fairly nebulous places. And this Dani one, although there was a concrete link 2 years ago, this resurgence of it felt fairly nebulous from the start. And because Bogert is saying there's no contact between the clubs, that means at least part of these reports about the talks with Dani are to a degree made up. Because if the clubs haven't talked, there's no number. And there's reports of like, okay, it'll be a move for $4 million or 4 million, whatever currency. If the clubs haven't talked, there's no way to know that. So that part was at least made up or filled in without actually knowing. That makes me think maybe all of it could be made up, or maybe there's a little bit of smoke, but it's not actually close to being done or not really going to happen, or maybe it won't happen. So, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if it does or if Dani goes somewhere else, but this does not seem a thing that is imminent, that it's going to happen now.
Well, and let's talk about two other deals that we have talked about. These are incoming now. We talked about maybe Tuti Andrade. I think it's probably the person that Austin FC fans were most excited about for no other reason, maybe than he was the most interesting attacking player that Austin had been connected to. Yes, up until Saturday was position of need, and obviously everything is fixed forever. Now it's like we've had one goal explosion. And we also had Evan Palacios now. Like, that deal's probably not going to happen too.
Diego Palacios,
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, both of these within the last couple of days seem like they're falling apart. The Andrade thing, there had been reports out of Brazil saying Andrade is leaving, but he'd rather go to Europe than to MLS. And then another report saying there's a few MLS clubs in negotiations for him. And then as recently as today, there's reports coming out saying that Austin's backed out. They're not interested anymore. Same thing with Chiqui Palacios, that there's negotiations. This is coming from Globo Esporte in Brazil, the Palacios stuff. This report is saying that there were negotiations. They were trying to finalize the negotiations. Palacios was not super interested. But then by the time he was interested, Austin was no longer interested and had pulled out. So it seems like, reading between the lines, again, I have no information about this. I'm reading the same things all of you listeners are, that Roto's trying to get a really good deal on some of these players for loans or whatever that keeps them low risk on our salary budget, which especially for Palacios, right? Like a guy who plays a position that, again, we don't actually really need right now. But if you can get him for really cheap on a really club-friendly deal, go for it. Get him if you can. If you can't, though, walk away. That's fine. Don't overpay for it. So I'm not super sad to see that one fall apart. The Andrade one, I'm a little more mixed about. But the fact that he is so young and was out of favor at his other club, I wasn't expecting him to come in and be the savior everyone hopes he would be, but he did look like a really fun little player.
Yeah, and every time I get excited about a potential young attacking player that we don't end up like getting across the line, I always think about Ake Loba, which we talked about being very excited about him, and then he ended up like the Austin deal doesn't happen. And he ends up in Nashville as a DP, and like I don't know where he's playing now.
Nothing.
Yeah, he might be working at like a Best Buy or something somewhere. Like I really do not know, but like I tried not. I mean, it's easy in moments when we all want goals to get overly emotionally invested in every rumor, but it's also like some perspective helps too.
Yeah, so the window just opened on Thursday. There's a chance that this is where we end and this is the team, but I think I'd be more surprised if that were the case than if there were still some changes to come. Jeremiah, let's catch up on All-Star Week. So me and Mike and Steph, who were here and kind of doing a bunch of events, we did a big recap on Swoon Tower last week. So if you want our super in-depth recap of our experiences during All-Star and want to hear me talk about crying in front of Susanna Collins, then go back to the Swoon Tower episode. But I want to hear, Jeremiah, your experience from experiencing this from afar and kind of seeing your town in the spotlight without you actually being here.
Yeah, one, super annoying. Very FOMO, maybe the biggest week of my life for that. So when we booked this trip to Destin back in October, did not realize it would be the week of the All-Star game. And well, one thing that I will say is that I did not tell my son that there was like Messi was going to be on the All-Star team, because I thought he might have like canceled the whole vacation. And luckily we didn't do that just to see Messi like some people seem to do, because that would have been pretty annoying. But yeah, I mean, it was just so cool. Like we heard as soon as the game was announced to be in Austin, that there was going to be all this like national media and like random things, and like both my kids knew that it was happening because they saw iShowSpeed, one of their favorite like YouTubers or whatever, like showing up at the skills challenge. So just like, I think everything that people wanted it and hoped it to be actually happened. It was honestly really fun to follow from afar while also missing it at the same point in time. And I feel like people are going to pick up on a lot of the content that y'all made, both this week on this show, on Swoon Tower, and I believe on some emergency podcast stuff too, maybe some soccer wise. But yeah, I mean, what a cool week for Austin. I feel like Austin really showed out too, because the other thing that I heard is that like the players and media and others were super excited to see like how Austin showed up for the skills challenge and how many fans were there, and that's not the kind of excitement they normally get. And I would assume it was the same for like the actual game on Wednesday night too.
Yeah, the skills challenge is usually very poorly attended, and it was, relatively speaking, I would not be surprised. I don't know the numbers, and I don't know if they'll give us the numbers, but I would bet that this is the best attended skills challenge in the short history of it, in the 5 or 6 years that they've done it. And then the All-Star game itself, I don't know that it's the best attended, but it was well attended. It was better attended than a lot of Austin FC games this year. And that's despite Messi not showing up. And I think that like definitely put a damper on the whole occasion. But that being said, the game was fun. The atmosphere was good. The like grizzled journalists in the press box that I was hanging out with, they all seemed impressed by the show Austin put on. They were impressed by everything going around in the city. And so, I mean, I felt proud of our city and of Brad Stuver, but it seemed like that wasn't entirely homerism, that everyone, including Don Garber, was like, actually, this is quite good and maybe better than it is in other places.
So did the journalists in the press box talk about how great the domain was, or did they actually see like some other parts of the city?
Luckily, it seemed like they were mostly all staying downtown. They, I didn't hear anybody talking about the domain, which I'll take as a positive.
Like, I've been to the historic Culinary Dropout and the domain.
Yeah,
and
which the domain's fine. This is more of a joke about how much the players all seem to think it's the pinnacle of civilization.
Actually, I spent more time in the domain than many other parts of the town. But yeah, so domain, it seemed like a really cool week for Austin, and really just all the things that we talked about that like this team might generate and what we might see all seem to come to fruition. And it kind of makes me, I don't know, like I can't imagine it's going to come around again anytime soon, because there's new teams, there's new stadiums, there's new whatever. So like it kind of makes me a little bit, sad to miss that moment in time. But like, yeah, good for y'all and everybody that was around. And the other thing we talked about was like, if you're going to watch an all-star game, like this one and the baseball all-star game are like the only two that somewhat resemble an actual match. And like you talked about, it was actually like not bad soccer. I did watch the game itself and it was pretty entertaining.
It was really fun. Both teams were trying to win. Like the Liga MX team maybe took their foot off the gas towards the end when it became apparent that they weren't going to mount the comeback, but it was a fun game to watch and both teams were taking it seriously.
So you also mentioned Don Garber talked about it. So we got the State of the League address, which he typically does, I guess twice a year, right? Like at the All-Star game and then
the Cup final normally.
Yeah, the Cup final. So like, what are I stole my highlights from Paul Tenorio because they happen to be the same as mine. But it's like, what were your highlights from this address?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say the same thing. I mean, I think there were some pretty clear ones. I will say, before we get to kind of the headline stuff, some just interesting moments from that address. I was in the room when he was giving it, and it was weird to be in the same room as all these people that I've read and listened to and watched for years, and to hear Paul Tenorio ask one of these questions that I then read in The Athletic, and then to have my Tom Bogert Twitter alert go off on my phone while I'm sitting like 6 feet from Tom Bogert. Like that stuff was cool. And I enjoyed that part of it. But getting into the actual headlines of the Garber stuff, he talked about aligning with the calendar in Europe and said it's not happening now, but the way he was talking about it is that it is happening. This is going to shift. We are going to go to a winter schedule.
Yeah, I definitely picked that up too. And I feel like it's weird that people in the northern United States always argue about how it's impossible because of winter. And I feel like that none of those people have ever been in Texas or Florida or Southern California in the summer because
Yeah.
it's also like awful. And teams in Europe that also have very serious winters have managed to figure it out.
Yeah, and Garber did kind of highlight some of the obstacles and the challenges that are like the reasons why they're not doing it sooner. One of which that he did kind of hint at is the CBA. Like if they switch this, they're going to have to renegotiate the CBA, which means they'll have to do that earlier than they were wanting to, which means they're likely going to have to pay players more than they want to earlier than they want to. And so that's part of it. He also just talked about kind of wanting to do it right, slow playing it, which I begrudgingly give MLS credit for that occasionally. But also, like, how long has this been in discussion? And was it long enough to take advantage of the World Cup break as a really natural time to shift the schedule, as opposed to doing it a year later when it's going to be a really awkward time to shift the schedule?
Yeah, he did talk about like sort of building off the World Cup. And this is I think this maybe flows into the roster strategy and financial flexibility part of it. I think it's the first time I felt, maybe not the first time, but one of the clearest times I felt like I've heard him talk about how much attention and money having the World Cup here in 2026 will bring, and then how they need to build changes off of that. And I think a lot of us hope that they would make those changes leading up to the World Cup, assuming the money would come. And he was very clear that, like, we know the money's coming, but also we're not going to make the changes until the money's coming.
Yeah, this seems like a little more bullish on his part, talking about roster changes. He's been very quick to like pump the brakes on any talks of like, yeah, we're gonna expand stuff. We'd like to do more, but we have to do it in the economic climate, blah 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 blah, into a way that our owners are comfortable with. It was a little less that and a little bit more. Yeah, we will make changes in the not so distant future. We'll make an announcement in time, but I think that people will be excited by it. Hopefully, he's not overplaying it, and it's like, oh, we'll let you pay 50,000 more in TAM to one player or something like that. Like the way he was talking about it made it sound like it's something significant. Who knows what it actually will be? Who knows when it actually will happen? But he was kind of talking a big game.
And I guess the other big one for me was the playoff structure, which he wasn't specific about, other than saying the league is looking at it and it will make the regular season more meaningful. Seem like something like a European structure, but still with playoffs, which I do not know what that means, because he says it's very different from anything that exists here in the States.
Yeah. And so he was not very clear there. I'm going to piece this together with something that I've been told, that I know that MLS has been doing focus groups on doing like a division structure, which would put you in like a regional division, and then playoffs break out from there, almost more like an NFL kind of thing, where you play your teams in your division several times, and then you have some games outside of that. And then the playoff structure would change significantly based on that as well. I don't know if that's the model that they're going to end up with, but it does seem like whatever they go with is going to shake things up quite a bit as far as who you play, who's in your division, how you get into the playoffs. And what Garber said seems to be
aligned with that.
Yeah, and maybe not necessarily these mock-ups that were shown in these focus groups, but something along those lines.
Yes. Do you have anything else that you wanted to cover that were big points out of this?
I guess one thing just about All-Star Week in general is I talked about getting to meet some of these people who I really respect and really like their work. So John Muller, who lives here in town now, but one of my favorite guys writing about data analytics stuff in soccer, Got to talk with Joe Lowry for a long time, and I told him that like we based this show off of the Total Soccer Show, and that him stepping in for Daryl after Daryl passed was like the spirit of Daryl lived on, because Joe is a very similar human being to Daryl. So getting to hang out with him was really nice. I met Jeff Reuter, who has also been doing this Total Soccer Show, but writes for The Athletic. I've always really liked his work. And then Alexander Abnos, who has worked for every soccer publication in America, I think, and now works for The Guardian as an editor and a writer. But we mostly talked about playing in bands, which he played in and still plays in bands as a drummer and kind of a producer. And so we didn't really talk about soccer, but I talked to Alexander Abnos about music. But John Muller, who I just mentioned, he like said very earnestly and genuinely complimentary things about our show. And so did Joe Lowry. And that made me feel really good. Just all the work we put into it. And then sometimes feeling like, is this worth it? Whenever the team sucks and we're missing time away from family or other just general free time, to have people whose work I really respect and who have like achieved big things in the soccer world in America, to look in me in my eye and like earnestly say, I like what you do. You're doing a good job. That felt great. And so, yeah, congratulations to us, Jeremiah.
Well, that's awesome, man. I mean, that's when people ask me on the street, and like when I did this podcast, it's going to come out in a couple of weeks, that we'll promote when it comes out. And people are like, what are the coolest moments you've ever, had? And I talk about like Adrian Healy's my buddy, right? And like,
Yeah.
we talked to Sam Stachel and Paul Tenorio and
Max Bretos giving us a shout out on the broadcast.
Yes. And they're like, that is so weird and inside. But like, honestly, those are the kinds of things for people who do what we do that like keep us going. And so it was really cool that you got to experience that in person. So I'm very happy for you, and a little bit jealous of you at the same time.
Well,
how that came out of that week.
It's your reward too. I know you didn't get to hear it in person, but it's your reward too.
Yeah. Thanks, man. All right, let's close this show out, because I don't feel like there's no better way to end this than where we are right now.
I think it's worth saying Austin FC does not have a game this week. Leagues Cup is starting up, and so a lot of the league is on pause. There is going to be a Leagues Cup game at Q2 next week, so we'll probably talk more about that next week. But Austin FC may or may not be playing a scrimmage this weekend, probably behind closed doors, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that came up on the broadcast as a quote from Nico Estevez, who first said friendly, and they're like, oh, we're a scrimmage, maybe. I don't know. So I feel like it's probably a scrimmage.
Yeah, he didn't seem very pleased with his team's response to having such a big break. And so that makes sense to me to say, okay, we're not going to do the break. We're going to play a game. Maybe it's against another MLS team. Maybe it's against some nobodies from up the road or whatever. But I like that idea. We probably won't get to see it. Probably won't get to hear anything about it, but glad it's happening.
Yeah. So if y'all need us, Austin FC right now, if you want to convene the Media Cup team to give the guys a run, we can do that.
I don't want to play against them. I feel like it would be demoralizing. All right, let's finish. Let's wrap up. Before we do that, we'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe. Come find us online, wherever you are online. Sign up for the Patreon. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week to preview the Houston Dynamo match at home and then cover any other Austin FC news, including potentially some player transfers. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Think for nothing, you never.
La gente.
Oh my God.
Because they love the cheap boom boom sauce.
Yeah.